The slap echoed through the narrow hallway like a gunshot. Valentina Marcello's cheek burned, hot, sharp, the kind of pain that lived in your bones long after the hand was gone. She didn't cry. Crying only made Federica angrier. "You think anyone's going to love you like this?" her stepmother hissed, fingers still curled from the strike. Broken. Useless. A charity case in a chair. Valentina's hand tightened on the wheel of her chair. Her left leg, twisted from the car accident that killed her mother 6 years ago, hung limp beneath the blanket. The doctors said she'd never walk again. Federica said she should have died with her mother. The front door slammed. Silence. Thick and suffocating. Valentina sat there in the dark hallway, tasting copper on her lip, and wondered how much longer she could survive this. Not the wheelchair, not the disability, but the slow, deliberate cruelty of a woman who resented her very existence. She rolled herself to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and let cold water run over her hands. In the mirror, a stranger stared back, pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, a bruise blooming purple across her cheekbone. 20 years old, and already so tired of being alive. The house settled around her with creaks and groans, each sound a reminder that she was trapped here. Her father had left her this house in his will, but Federica controlled everything else, the bank accounts, the bills, even Valentina's medication. The court had ruled in Valentina's favor regarding the house, but what good was a house when you couldn't afford to leave it? Valentina dried her face carefully, avoiding the bruise, and made a decision. She'd been thinking about it for weeks. Ever since Federica had locked her out on the porch during a rainstorm, leaving her there for 3 hours while she forgot Valentina existed. She couldn't stay here anymore. She had to leave, even if she had nowhere to go. She rolled back to her room, packed a small bag with whatever would fit, clothes, the photo of her parents on their wedding day, her mother's journal. She tucked her father's old wallet into her pocket, the one with $43 and a library card that had expired 2 years ago. It wasn't much, but it was something. The rain started as she made her way down the ramp her father had built 6 years ago, back when he still believed she'd need it. Back when he was still alive to care. Valentina pushed herself forward, one rotation at a time, her arms already aching from the effort. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she couldn't stay in that house for another night. The streets were empty, slick with rain that reflected the amber glow of streetlights. Valentina's hands were cold, her clothes already damp, but she kept moving. Away from the house. Away from Federica. Away from everything that made her feel small and broken and unwanted. She found herself outside Café Nero, a small corner place that stayed open late. Through the windows, she could see people inside, warm, dry, laughing over coffee and pastries. Normal people with normal problems. She parked her chair under the awning, out of the rain, and just stopped. Her arms hurt. Her cheek throbbed. And she had absolutely no idea what to do next. That's when a man walked out of the cafe, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing an expensive coat. He paused under the awning, noticed her, and his conversation faltered for just a moment. Valentina looked away quickly. She was used to that. The double take, the awkward pause, the way people's eyes would slide past her like she was part of the scenery. But this man didn't look away. When he finished his call, he slipped the phone into his pocket and approached her. "Bad night." His voice was quiet, accented, not unkind. Valentina glanced up, surprised he'd spoken to her at all. "You could say that." He studied her face, the bruise, the split lip, the exhaustion. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "That's not what I ask." Valentina's throat tightened. She didn't know this man. Didn't know why he was talking to her or what he wanted. But there was something in his tone, something steady and certain, that made her want to trust him even though every instinct told her not to. "My stepmother," she said finally, the words scraping out. "She doesn't like me very much." The man was quiet for a moment, rain drumming against the awning above them. Then he crouched down slowly, deliberately, so they were at eye level. Up close, Valentina could see the details, the scar along his jaw, the silver threading through his dark hair, the weight in his gray eyes that spoke of things he'd seen and done. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I don't know." Her voice broke. "Anywhere but home." He nodded once, like that made perfect sense. "It's not safe out here. Especially not alone." "I know. Do you have somewhere to stay?" Valentina laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "If I did, I wouldn't be sitting outside a café in the rain." The man stood, pulled out his phone, and made a call. He spoke quietly, too low for her to hear, then hung up and looked at her again. "My driver will be here in 2 minutes. He'll take you somewhere safe." Valentina's heart hammered. "Why would you do that?" "Because no one should be out here alone in the rain." He paused. "Especially not someone who's already been hurt. I don't even know you." "My name is Giovanni." He offered his hand, calloused, scarred, steady. "And you don't have to trust me. But you also don't have many options." He was right. Valentina knew that. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. Still, when a sleek black car pulled up to the curb moments later, she found herself nodding. Giovanni helped her into the back seat with surprising gentleness, folding her wheelchair and placing it in the trunk. He slid in beside her, and the driver, a silent, stone-faced man who didn't ask questions, pulled away from the curb. The interior smelled like leather and something darker, smoke, maybe, or gunpowder. Valentina sat rigid, hands folded in her lap, trying to ignore the rising panic in her chest. What had she just done? Gotten into a stranger's car because he'd been kind to her for 5 minutes? Federica's voice echoed in her head. "You're so desperate for attention you'd follow anyone who smiled at you." "Where are we going?" Valentina asked, her voice smaller than she'd intended. "Somewhere you can rest," Giovanni said. "No one will hurt you there." "You keep saying that like you can promise it." "I can." The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years, safe. They drove through parts of the city Valentina didn't recognize, the streets growing narrower and darker. When the car finally stopped, they were outside what looked like an old warehouse, brick and shadow, windows covered, the kind of place people in movies got murdered. Valentina's breath hitched. "What is this?" "Home," Giovanni said simply. He helped her out of the car, unfolded her wheelchair, and guided her toward the entrance. 2 men in dark suits stood by the door, hands folded, eyes sharp. They nodded at Giovanni, didn't even glance at Valentina. Inside, the warehouse was nothing like she'd expected. Warm lights, comfortable furniture, art on exposed brick walls. A kitchen in the corner where someone was cooking something that smelled like garlic and herbs. Men moved through the space with purpose, some on phones, others reading, a few playing cards at a long table. No one looked surprised to see her. "This is your home?" Valentina asked, trying to process the disconnect between the exterior and interior. "One of them." An older woman appeared, gray hair pulled back, kind eyes, flour dusting her apron. She smiled when she saw Valentina. "Madonna, look at you. Come, let me get you something warm." She spoke with the same accent as Giovanni, her hands already reaching for Valentina's face to examine the bruise. "This is Sofia," Giovanni said. "She takes care of everyone here. You're safe with her." Sofia tooted, her expression darkening as she took in the bruise, the split lip. "Who did this to you, Cara?" "It doesn't matter," Valentina said quietly. "It always matters." Sofia's voice was firm but gentle. "Come. You need food and rest. We'll deal with the rest tomorrow." She wheeled Valentina into a small room off the main space, cozy, clean, with a bed and a window that overlooked the city. Someone had already placed fresh towels on the dresser and laid out clothes that looked like they might actually fit. "How did you?" Valentina started. "Giovanni called ahead," Sofia said, helping Valentina transfer from the wheelchair to the bed. "He has a way of knowing what people need before they ask." "Who is he?" Sofia paused, her hands stilling on the blanket she was tucking around Valentina. "He's someone who understands what it's like to be hurt by people who should have protected you." She straightened, brushed Valentina's hair back from her face. Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. After Sophia left, Valentina lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the last 2 hours. She'd left her stepmother's house with no plan and $43. Now she was in a stranger's home, a warehouse full of dangerous-looking men and a woman who treated her like family. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in years, she felt almost safe. Sleep came slowly, interrupted by nightmares of Federica's voice and the echo of that slap. But when Valentina woke in the morning, sunlight streaming through the window, she found a tray on the bedside table, coffee, fresh bread, fruit, and a note in elegant handwriting. Rest. You're safe here.
Gee.
Over the next few days, Valentina learned the rhythm of the warehouse. Sophia cooked meals that people ate together around a long table, everyone talking and laughing like a family. Men came and went at odd hours, some carrying briefcases, others carrying things Valentina tried not to think about. Giovanni moved through it all like the sun at the center of a solar system. Quiet, steady, impossible to ignore. He checked on her every morning, bringing coffee and asking how she'd slept. He never pushed her to talk about Federica or the bruises, or why she'd been sitting outside a cafe in the rain. He just gave her space. And somehow, that made her want to talk. On the 4th day, Valentina found him in a small office tucked into the corner of the warehouse, paperwork spread across his desk. She knocked on the open door, and he looked up, surprised. Is everything all right? He asked.
Yes.
She rolled herself closer. I wanted to thank you. For everything. You didn't have to help me, but you did. Giovanni set down his pen, leaned back in his chair. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. I don't understand why you're doing this, but I'm grateful. He was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes studying her. 6 years ago, I was in trouble. Bad trouble. Someone found me bleeding in an alley and got me to a hospital. Saved my life. That person was your father. Valentina's breath caught. You knew my father? Marcello. He never told you. He never told me a lot of things. She swallowed hard. He died 8 months ago. Cancer. I know. Giovanni's voice softened. I went to the funeral. Stayed in the back. I wanted to introduce myself, but you looked so, he stopped. I thought you had enough to deal with. You've been watching me? Keeping an eye on you, he corrected. Your father asked me to before he died. Made me promise I'd make sure you were all right. Tears burned in Valentina's eyes. He knew. About Federica. About how she treated me. He suspected. But he was too sick to do anything about it. Giovanni's jaw tightened. I should have stepped in sooner. Why didn't you? Because I'm not a good man, Valentina. And I didn't want to make your life more complicated than it already was. He stood, moved to the window, hands in his pockets. But when I saw you outside that cafe, I knew I couldn't keep my distance anymore. Valentina wiped her eyes. What do you mean, you're not a good man? Giovanni turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something raw in his expression. I run a business that operates outside the law. The men you see here, they work for me. And the things we do, they're not things good people do. You're talking about the Mafia. I'm talking about survival. About protecting the people I care about in a world that doesn't care about anyone. Valentina should have been afraid. Should have demanded he take her back, let her go, anything. But she looked at Giovanni, really looked at him, and all she saw was a man who'd kept a promise to her dying father. A man who'd given her safety when she had nowhere else to go. My father trusted you, she said quietly. That's enough for me. Something shifted in Giovanni's expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief. Your father was a better man than I'll ever be. Maybe. But you're the one who's here. They fell into a routine after that. Valentina spent her mornings in physical therapy with a specialist Giovanni had arranged, a woman named Dr. Chun who didn't believe in the word impossible. The exercises were brutal, painful, progress measured in millimeters. But Valentina pushed through, driven by a stubborn refusal to let Federica's voice be right about her. In the afternoons, she helped Sofia in the kitchen or read in the garden, a small rooftop space filled with plants and sunlight. Giovanni joined her sometimes, sitting in comfortable silence or answering her questions about her father. Marcello had been a good man caught in bad circumstances. He'd owed money to dangerous people, and Giovanni had helped him work it off. Over time, they'd become friends. When Marco got sick, Giovanni had made sure his medical bills were paid, that he had the best care available. And when Marco died, Giovanni had quietly paid for the funeral that Federica later claimed she'd covered. She didn't spend a single dollar on him, Giovanni said one afternoon, his voice tight with controlled anger. She was already planning how to get rid of you and sell the house. Valentina's hands clenched in her lap. I knew she hated me. I didn't know she was planning. She couldn't finish. She won't touch you again, Giovanni said, and the certainty in his voice was absolute. I've made sure of that. What did you do? What needed to be done? Valentina wanted to push, to demand answers. But part of her, the part that had lived under Federica's cruelty for 8 months, didn't want to know. As long as she was safe, as long as Federica couldn't hurt her anymore, maybe that was enough. Weeks turned into months. Valentina's bruises faded. Her physical therapy progressed. She could stand now for short periods, leaning heavily on parallel bars. Dr. Chen said it might be years before she could walk unassisted, if ever. But might and if ever were better than never. And slowly, carefully, Valentina began to heal. Not just her body, but something deeper, the part of her that Federica had spent 8 months trying to destroy. The part that believed she was worth saving. Giovanni was there for all of it. Not hovering, not intrusive, just present. He celebrated her small victories. The first time she stood for a full minute, the day she transferred from her wheelchair to a regular chair without help. He sat with her during the hard days when the pain was too much and progress felt impossible. He never told her to be strong or to push through, or any of the hollow platitudes people usually offered. He just stayed. And Valentina found herself falling for him in ways she hadn't expected. Not the dramatic, sweep you off your feet kind of love for movies, but something quieter, steadier. The kind of love built on trust and presence and the simple act of showing up day after day. She didn't tell him, didn't know how. Giovanni was a man who lived in shadows, who carried violence in his hands and secrets in his eyes. What could she possibly offer someone like that? But then one night, 6 months after she'd arrived, Valentina found him on the rooftop garden, staring out at the city lights. He looked tired, older, somehow, the weight of whatever he carried showing in the slump of his shoulders. She rolled herself closer. Bad day. Long day, he corrected. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. He glanced at her and something in his expression softened. But I wouldn't mind the company. They sat in comfortable silence, the city humming below them. Finally, Valentina said, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave me my life back, Giovanni. You gave me a home. You, her voice caught. You made me feel like I mattered. Giovanni turned to face her fully, and in the dim light, his eyes were impossibly gentle. You always mattered, Valentina. Federica tried to convince you otherwise, but she was wrong. How do you know? Because I've spent 6 months watching you fight for every inch of progress. Watching you refuse to give up even when it hurt. Watching you choose to be kind even after the world was cruel to you. He reached out, his hand covering hers. That's not someone who doesn't matter. That's someone extraordinary. Valentina's throat tightened. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just surviving. Giovanni's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Surviving is the most extraordinary thing any of us can do. The air between them shifted, charged, fragile, full of things neither of them had said. Valentina looked at their hands, his scarred and calloused, hers smaller and trembling slightly. Giovanni, she whispered. I don't know what this is. Between us. But she took a breath. I don't want to leave. His grip tightened. I don't want you to leave either. But I'm scared. Of me. Of feeling safe. Every time I've felt safe, it's been taken away. Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, voice low and serious, I can't promise nothing will ever hurt you again. I can't promise the world won't be cruel. But I can promise that as long as I'm alive, you'll have a home here. You'll have people who care about you. And you'll never have to face anything alone. Valentina looked up at him, saw the truth in his eyes, and made a choice. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed her forehead to his. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Giovanni's arms came around her, careful, gentle, like she was something precious. And for the first time in 6 years, Valentina let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was. Time moved differently after that. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. Valentina's physical therapy continued. She could walk now, short distances with a cane, her left leg still weak, but functional. Dr. Chin said it was remarkable progress, that most people with her injuries never regained this much mobility. Valentina knew why she'd succeeded where others hadn't. She'd had something to fight for. Someone to fight for. Giovanni proposed on a quiet Tuesday evening. No fanfare or grand gesture. Just the two of them in the rooftop garden. The city spread out below, and a simple question. Will you spend the rest of your life with me? Valentina said yes before he'd even finished asking. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony with just Sophia, Dr. Chen, and a handful of Giovanni's closest friends. No white dress, no elaborate reception. Just two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something better in the light. On their wedding night, as they lay tangled together in the quiet, Valentina asked the question she'd been holding for months. What happened to Federica? Giovanni's hand stilled on her back. Do you really want to know? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, she was arrested 2 days after you left. Fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse. The court found evidence she'd been forging your father's signature, draining his accounts, and planning to have you declared incompetent so she could take full control of his estate. Valentina's breath caught. How did they find out? Someone gave them the evidence. Someone. Giovanni met her eyes. Me. You had her arrested? I had her held accountable.
His voice was firm.
She hurt you, Valentina. She spent 8 months making your life hell. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Valentina should have felt vindicated, triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. Is she still in prison?
Yes.
She'll be there for a long time. Good. The word came out harder than she'd intended. Then softer. No, not good. I don't want to be the kind of person who celebrates someone else's suffering, even hers. Giovanni pulled her closer. You're not. You're the kind of person who survived her and chose to be better. I want to be better. I want to be the kind of person my father would be proud of. You already are. They fell silent, the weight of everything they'd survived settling around them like a blanket. Finally, Valentina said, I think about her sometimes. About what made her that way. If she was always cruel, or if something happened to her that broke something inside. Does it matter? Maybe. Maybe understanding how people break helps us figure out how not to become them.
Giovanni considered that.
Your father used to say something similar. He said the world was full of broken people, and the only thing that separated the monsters from the survivors was whether they chose to break others or build something better from the pieces. Valentina smiled. That sounds like something he'd say. He was right. About a lot of things. Giovanni's hand found hers in the darkness. He was right about you. Said you were stronger than you knew. That you'd survive anything life threw at you. I survived because I wasn't alone, Valentina said. Because you kept your promise to him. I kept my promise because some things are worth protecting. And you, his voice caught. You were always worth protecting. Years passed. Valentina opened a small bookstore in a quiet part of the city, a place where people could come and feel safe and seen. She hired people others had written off, the disabled, the formerly incarcerated, those society had decided weren't worth a second chance. She gave them what Giovanni had given her: opportunity, dignity, a place to belong. Giovanni gradually moved away from the darker parts of his business, using his resources to fund legitimate enterprises, community centers, scholarship programs, housing for families who had nowhere else to go. He would never be a saint, would never fully escape the shadows of his past. But he could use what he'd built to make sure others didn't have to live in those shadows. One afternoon, 7 years after Valentina had first sat outside Café Nero in the rain, a young woman came into the bookstore. She was maybe 19, walking with a limp, carrying a backpack that held everything she owned. She had a bruise on her cheek and fear in her eyes. Valentina recognized that look. Had worn it herself once. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I don't have anywhere to go. My boyfriend, she couldn't finish." Valentina came around the counter, approached slowly, non-threateningly. "What's your name?" "Lucia." "Lucia, have you eaten today?" The girl shook her head. "Come with me." Valentina led her to the back room where she kept a small kitchen. She made tea, heated up leftover soup Sophia had sent over that morning, and set it in front of the girl.
"Eat.
Then we'll figure out what comes next." Lucia ate like she was starving, which she probably was. When she'd finished, Valentina said, "I know someone who can help. He runs a place where people can stay when they don't have anywhere else to go. It's safe there. No one will hurt you." "Why would you help me?" Lucia asked, tears streaming down her face. "You don't even know me." Valentina thought about that rainy night 7 years ago. About a stranger who'd stopped to help when he didn't have to. About the promise he'd kept to her dying father. About all the ways one act of kindness could ripple outward, changing everything. "Because someone helped me once," she said. "And I learned that the world doesn't have to be cruel. We just have to choose to be better than the people who hurt us." She made a call. 20 minutes later, Giovanni arrived, and Lucia's eyes went wide with fear at the sight of him. Tall, intimidating, exactly the kind of man young women were taught to avoid. But Valentina touched his arm, and his expression softened. He crouched down to Lucia's level, hands open, non-threatening. "My name is Giovanni," he said gently. "And you're safe now. I promise." Lucia looked between them, this mismatched pair, who somehow fit together perfectly. "Why are you doing this?" Giovanni glanced at Valentina, and she saw everything in his eyes. The years they'd survived, the life they'd built, the choice they made every day to be something other than what the world expected. "Because someone once taught us that the most powerful thing you can do is help someone who can't help themselves," he said. "And we're just passing it forward." They took Lucia to the warehouse that night. Sophia fussed over her, made her soup, set her up in the same room Valentina had once stayed in. The girl cried herself to sleep, exhausted from fear and relief and the overwhelming strangeness of finding safety in the most unexpected place. Later, as Valentina and Giovanni drove home through the quiet city streets, she said, "Do you think we're doing enough? There are so many people who need help." "We can't save everyone," Giovanni said, his hand finding hers. "But we can save the ones in front of us. And maybe they'll go on to save someone else. That's how the world gets better, one person at a time, one choice at a time." Valentina leaned her head on his shoulder. "My father would be proud of you. He'd be proud of both of us." Giovanni kissed her forehead. "We took the worst things that happened to us and built something good from the pieces. That's all anyone can do." And he was right. The world was full of broken people and cruel circumstances and pain that sometimes felt insurmountable. But it was also full of people like Giovanni, who kept promises to dying friends. People like Sophia, who mothered everyone who walked through her door. People like Dr. Chin, who believed in impossible recoveries. People like Valentina herself, who survived and chose to make sure others could survive too. The brokenness didn't define them. What they built from it did. That was the lesson Valentina carried forward. That was the lesson she hoped Lucia would learn. That was the lesson she wanted to leave behind when her time came. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose what you become because of it. You can let the cruelty make you cruel, Or you can let it teach you compassion. You can let the pain break you, or you can let it show you how strong you really are. And when you find yourself in the darkness, when you're sitting outside a cafe in the rain with nowhere to go and no one to turn to, look for the light. It might come from the most unexpected place. It might come from someone you never thought would help. But it will come. And when it does, hold on to it. Let it guide you home. And then, when you're strong enough, become that light for someone else. Because that's how we survive the darkness. Not alone, not afraid, but together, one act of kindness at a time, building something better from the broken pieces the world left us with. That was Valentina's story. That was Giovanni's promise. That was the truth they lived every day. We're all broken, but broken things can heal. And healed things can help others heal too. That's not just survival. That's redemption. That's grace. That's how we become more than the pain that tried to destroy us. And that's the only lesson that really matters.